Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Actually 19th chapter. It says Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Raja Janarajana Yashodanandana Brajayana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Jayamudiraye.
Ato Jayamudiraye
Nasta Praishvabhadreshu.
Nasta Praishvabhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Dear Bhavati Naistaki. This morning we're going to read the second half of chapter 20 of chapter 19 of the 11th canto, The Perfection of Spiritual Knowledge. We're going to cover a lot of verses, but we'll start with number 25 just to launch the discussion. We could do the Sanskrit. Yadatman yarpitam chittam shantam sattvo paprimhitam dharmam jnanam savairagyam aishwaryam cha vipadyate. Yadatman yarpitam chittam shantam sattvo paprimhitam dharmam jnanam savairagyam aishwaryam cha vipadyate. Please chant.
Atmani arpitam chittam
Yadatman chittam
Tam sattva pabrimhitam
sattvam sattva paprimhitam
Dharmam jnanam savairagyam
dharmam jnanam savairagyam
Aishwaryam cha vipadyate
aishwaryam cha vipadyate. Yadatman yarpitam chittam Shantam Sattva-pabrimhitam. Dharmam Dhyanam Savaragyam. Aishwaram Chavipadyate. Yadatmanyarpita Chitam. Shantam Sattva-pabrimhitam. Dharmam Jnanam Savairagyam. Aishwaryam Chavipadyate. Anyone else? Okay. Synonyms together, please. Yada, when, Atmani, in the Supreme Lord, Arpitam, fixed, Chittam, consciousness, Shantam, peaceful, Sattva, by the mode of goodness, Upabritam, strengthened, Dharmam, religiosity, Jnanam, knowledge, Saha, he, Vairagyam, detachment, Aishwaryam, opulence, Cha, also, Abhipadyate, achieves, and translation together. When one's peaceful consciousness, strengthened by the mode of goodness, is fixed on the personality of Godhead, one achieves religiosity, knowledge, detachment, and opulence. Purport. A pure devotee becomes peaceful, shanta, by desiring everything for the service of the Lord and nothing for himself. He is strengthened by the transcendental or purified mode of goodness, and thus achieves the supreme religious principle of directly serving the Lord. He also achieves jnana, or knowledge of the Lord's form and his own spiritual body, detachment from material piety and sin, and the opulences of the spiritual world. One who is not a pure devotee of the Lord, however, but whose devotion is mixed with a fascination for mystic knowledge, is strengthened by the material mode of goodness. Through his meditation on the Lord, he achieves lesser results of dharma, piety in the mode of goodness, jnana, knowledge of spirit and matter, and vairagya, detachment from the lower modes of nature. Ultimately, one should be a pure devotee of the Lord, since even the best the material world has to offer is most insignificant compared with the kingdom of God. This chapter is called The Perfection of Spiritual Knowledge, and the topic is about bhakti. And we're going to read a lot of verses here because our esteemed scholar, Prabhupada Priya, whose departure day celebration is tonight, right? She is going through the Bhagavatam and putting these in more bite-sized sections. Right? So what we have here, though, is a rather lengthy description of the process of bhakti. And but just before we launch into that, I wanted to just say a moment about this purport. It's saying how when one tries to be Krishna conscious, even if one is not fully devoted to Krishna, there's still benefits. And we see that practically, like people come to Krishna house and they like living in the ashram, they practice, they like chanting, but they can't really grasp the point of my life is meant for pleasing Krishna. And that's not a stereotype, how just pleasing Krishna is just one particular way. There's great diversity of ways. Arjuna was fighting on the battlefield. It isn't just do this particular service and that's the only way to please Krishna. But like Prabhupada Priya said so eloquently the other day, that Krishna house is like a fertile ground where people are planted, hopefully feet first, and then they sprout into some beautiful flower of some kind. That's the idea, to draw out what is the best within each of us, which only really becomes manifest in relation to Krishna. This is the point. People find that very specific and therefore very threatening. Isn't it? That Krishna is God, well, okay, that's what you want to believe, that's right, but it's not absolute, it's not for everybody. You can believe what you want, I'll believe what I want, and this way there is no actual absolute standard of knowledge. It's like in society, people will be swayed to buy a particular brand or a particular car, say a car, for example, by advertisement, by word of mouth, by their experience, whatever. And that's considered all right for you. That's your choice. That's all right for you. You want to drive a Ford, a Nissan, this or that. That's your choice. That's all right. So similarly, philosophy has been reduced to kind of a consumerism. Okay, that's your philosophy. That's all right. That's good for you. You can have your philosophy, my philosophy, and we'll just all be cool with that. There's no absolute. See, there is no absolute standard for everybody. So this is why Krishna consciousness benefits everybody. But to get the full benefit, one has to understand the simple point that the goal of life is serving Krishna. That encompasses serving God, because Krishna is God. But without knowing Krishna, how much can we really serve God? How can we serve an unknown quantity? How can we serve an unknown person? We don't know who he is, therefore how can we know what God wants? This is the beauty of Srimad Bhagavatam. When Vyasadeva had written many other scriptures to encourage people, to elevate people in various situations in life, he was still unsatisfied because he hadn't gotten to the point, this particular point, that spirituality means Krishna. And so therefore he wrote Srimad Bhagavatam, and we benefit from hearing it. So bhakti means service for Krishna. Right? I was once, our friend Brahmatirtha was here, and I said, you can't say, I have bhakti for some other person, like I have bhakti for my wife. And he said, well, I can say that, because his wife is named Bhakti. But the point is that the specificity of Krishna is what's really outstanding about Srimad Bhagavatam and about this whole process. You know, we can't be afraid to be a devotee of Krishna. And we can appreciate that people are pious and they're getting some benefit from their spirituality. You know, what it says here, anyway, they get various kinds of improvements in their life through their spirituality. But the full benefit of spiritual life comes when we understand the personality of Godhead. Any comments on this much before we go on? Okay, fasten your seatbelts here. We're going to read some very interesting discussions with a lot of details about bhakti. And then after Krishna elucidates some, then Uddhava asks a number of questions, a whole bunch of questions, and then Krishna answers them. And this is the sort of experience this morning where you just want to let this wash over you. Don't worry about holding on and memorize everything. Just let it, just hear and let it cleanse us by hearing. And then, but in the course of this, I'd like to ask everyone, I want to challenge you in one little thing. Out of the many topics we're going to read about and hear about just now, try to pick out one thing in particular that moves you or that intrigues you or that about which you have a question. Okay, and after we read all of them, then we'll ask people to volunteer their particular topic of interest. Is that all right? If you have a pen, you might want to write it down because there's going to be a bunch. In fact, you might want to choose two just in case somebody steals your first choice. All right, so how shall we read here? Can we just go? So we'll start with Stephen, I guess, since you've got the mic, you're all loaded, and just go around.
Firm faith in the blissful narrations of my pastimes, constant chanting of my glories, unwavering attachment to ceremonial worship of me, praising me through beautiful hymns, great respect for my devotional service, offering obeisances with the entire body, performing first-class worship of my devotees, consciousness of me and all living entities, offering of ordinary bodily activities in my devotional service, use of words to describe my qualities, offering the mind to me, rejection of all material desires, giving up wealth for my devotional service, renouncing material sense gratification and happiness, and performing all desirable activities such as charity, sacrifice, chanting, vows, and austerities with the purpose of achieving me. These constitute actual religious principles by which those human beings who have actually surrendered themselves to me automatically develop love for me. What other purpose or goal could remain for my devotee?
When one's peaceful consciousness, strengthened by the mode of goodness, is fixed on the personality of Godhead, one achieves religiosity, knowledge, detachment, and opulence.
When consciousness is fixed on the material body, home, and other, and other similar objects of sense gratification, one spends one's life chasing after material objects with the help of senses. Consciousness, thus powerfully affected by the mode of passion, becomes dedicated to impermanent things, and in this way irreligion, ignorance, attachment, and wretchedness arise.
Okay, go ahead. Let's go across.
Actual religious principles are stated to be those that led one to my devotional service. Real knowledge is the awareness that reveals my all-pervading presence. Detachment is complete disinterest in the objects of material sense gratification, and opulence is the 8 mystic perfections, such as Anmita Siddhi.
This is a very long one, so maybe read 3 or 4 sentences and pass it on.
Sri Uddhava said, "My dear Lord Krishna, O chastiser of the enemies, please tell me how many types of disciplinary regulations and regular daily duties there are. Also, my Lord, tell me what is mental equilibrium, what is self-control, and what is the actual meaning of tolerance and steadfastness. What are charity, austerity, and heroism, and how are reality and truth to be described?"
What is renunciation and what is wealth? What is desirable? What is sacrifice? And what is religious remuneration? My dear Keshava, most fortunate one, how am I to understand the strength, opulence, profit of a particular person? What is the best education? What is actual humility? And what is real beauty? What are happiness and unhappiness? Who is learned and who is a fool? What are true and false paths in life? What are heaven and hell? Who is indeed a true friend? And what is one's real home? Who is a rich man and who is a poor man? Who is wretched and who is an actual controller? O Lord of the devotees, kindly explain these matters to me, along with their opposites.
Along with your opposites. Any other questions?
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Non-violence, truthfulness, not coveting or stealing the property of others, detachment, humility, freedom from possessiveness, trust in the principles of religion, celibacy, silence, steadiness, forgiveness, and fearlessness are the 12 primary disciplinary principles. Internal cleanliness, external cleanliness, chanting the holy names of the Lord, austerity, sacrifice, faith, hospitality, worship of me, visiting holy places, acting and desiring only for the supreme interest, satisfaction, and service to the spiritual master are the 12 elements of regular prescribed duties. These 24 elements bestow all desired benedictions upon those persons who devotedly cultivate them."
Absorbing the intelligence in me constitutes mental equilibrium, and complete discipline of the senses is self-control. Tolerance means patiently enduring unhappiness, and steadfastness occurs when one conquers the tongue and genitals. The greatest charity is to give up all aggression towards others, and renunciation of lust is understood to be real austerity. Real heroism is to conquer one's natural tendency to enjoy material life, and in reality is seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead everywhere. Truthfulness means to speak the truth in a pleasing way, as declared by great sages. Cleanliness is detachment in fruit of activities, whereas renunciation is the sannyasa order of life. The true desirable wealth for human beings is religiousness, and I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, am sacrifice. Religious remuneration is devotion to the acharya with the purpose of acquiring spiritual instruction, and the greatest strength is a pranayama system of breath control.
It's a very long one, so again, read 3 or 4 sentences and pass it on, please.
Actual opulence is my own nature as the personality of Godhead, through which I exhibit the 6 unlimited opulences. The supreme gain in life is devotional service to me, and actual education is nullifying the false perception of duality within the soul. Real modesty is to be disgusted with improper activities, and beauty is to possess good qualities such as detachment.
Real happiness is to transcend material happiness and unhappiness. The real misery is to be implicated in searching for sex pleasure. A wise man is one who knows the process of freedom from bondage, and a fool is one who identifies with his material body and mind. The real path in life is that which leads to me, and wrong path is sense gratification, by which consciousness is bewildered. Actual heaven is the predominance of the mode of goodness, whereas hell is the predominance of ignorance. I am everyone's true friend, acting as the spiritual master of the entire universe, and one's home in the human body. My dear friend Uddhava, one who is enriched with good qualities is actually said to be rich, and one who is unsatisfied in life is actually poor. A wretched person is one who cannot control his senses, whereas one who is not attached to sense gratification is a real controller. Okay. One who attaches himself to sense gratification is the opposite, a slave. Thus, Uddhava, I have elucidated all the matters about which you are inquired. There is no need to be more elaborate description of those good and bad qualities, since to consistently see good and bad is itself a bad quality, and the best quality is to transcend material good and evil.
Whoa, okay. The best quality is to transcend material good and evil. As they call a fortissimo in music, it wraps up. Think about that for a moment. To transcend material good and evil is the best quality. What does that mean? It means that as we go through life and good and bad things happen, we're not affected. And that's the best quality. Just of all these he listed, that's such a nice image. All right, anyway, so let's just continue from this direction with Ashtasakti. So what was the one topic brought up that caught your attention the most? Please go ahead.
There was this one sentence in the very beginning. Maybe you could go back to it. It starts with when one's peaceful consciousness strengthened by the mode of goodness is fixed on the personality of Godhead, one achieves religiosity, knowledge, detachment, and opulence. So I really like that one because for me, I'm like realizing how important it is to be like in the mode of goodness and how it really affects our consciousness, and then it really makes us peaceful. So that's something that's very forgot the word. Yeah, so it's very important for me right now. So I'm trying to.
Thank you. Very nice. Yes, that was the example is given that if the water in a pond is very still, then you can see what's on the bottom. But if the surface is agitated, it's hard to see through it. So similarly, if the mind is agitated by the good and bad things that happen, that inevitably happen in our lives, if our minds are agitated by those, then our pure consciousness can't come out.
Yeah, and then we can literally achieve anything. Yes. Religiosity, knowledge, detachment, and opulence.
Yes, automatically those things come. Yes, they're just fixed. If our consciousness is fixed on Krishna, it's like the GPS. We just keep coming back to okay, what would please Krishna now under these circumstances? Does anyone know a verse from the first canto, chapter 2, on this point? It's a somewhat obscure verse, but I thought some of you scholars might remember. It goes, Evam Presana Manaso, Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha. Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana Mukta Sangasya Jayate. That when the mind comes to the mode of goodness, then one goes beyond the mode of goodness onto the platform of devotional service. When Evam Prasana Manaso, when the mind becomes enlivened by devotional service, one then transcends the mode of goodness even. Okay, very good. Thank you. Tulsi Prabhu, what caught your eye in this long description of bhakti?
For me, it was actually right at the end, that sentence where it says, to constantly see good and bad is itself a bad quality. I found that quite interesting, that they would say that Because you would think that trying to see good and bad is you trying to discriminate between what is you should do and what you shouldn't do. But I find it quite interesting that they say it's a bad quality overall, because you're just fixating on bad qualities and good qualities, and you're not trying to just get above it, transcend all of the qualities. So I find that quite interesting.
Very good. that's a beautiful point. So how do we have discrimination and at the same time not be affected by good or bad? We like the good, we don't like the bad. Should a devotee just be oblivious to good and bad stuff? Yeah, what do you think?
No, I don't think that we should be oblivious to good things or bad things. I think that we should just not be affected by it. So we shouldn't be affected by the good, and we shouldn't be affected by the bad.
All right, very good. Yes, surprise. One should not be surprised. Srila Prabhupada said this: material world means shock after shock. One bad thing happens after that. And a lot of Krishna consciousness means to lower our expectations materially. Like, we're not expecting to get a lot of joy out of this material world. Whatever pleasure comes along, there's going to be an equivalent amount of suffering. And so, why be surprised? Good, thank you. Advaita Prabhu.
I have a few. That what Prabhupada said, shock after shock, sounds like a continuous trauma. In 39, and I also was very delighted to see that, to differentiate between good and bad, or like sweating and nitpicking is bad in itself. But on 39, there was something that came up. The greatest charity is giving up aggression towards others. That was really an interesting way to put it. Because just the other day I was listening to one of the interviews that Prabhupada gave, I think it was 68 in San Francisco. He was talking about the absence of goal in life, and how people are doomed, without goal in life, people are doomed to kind of spiritual goal, doomed to be on a bodily platform. So therefore they don't recognize how we're all brothers and sisters, and they're barking like dogs. Says, why you're coming? And I think he might have barked too. I can't remember. So to give up that aggression, that animosity towards others, here is recognized as the greatest charity.
The greatest charity. That's so nice. Thank you. That reminds me of the chaplains committee over here at the university. We used to meet and discuss various activities in our religious student centers around campus. And so during one spring break, the couple of the groups were going to Honduras to build houses, or going to Guatemala to do food distribution, charitable actions. I said, so what did you do? Well, we drove to Houston and had a big kirtan party. How is this recognized as charity, you see? And the beauty of this charity is not giving up aggressiveness towards others, is rooted in this same idea of wanting to enjoy the material world. There's only so many resources, so an aggressive person will want to get as much as possible. Let me take care of myself, my family, my country. This is probably called the defending propensity, nidrahara maitunya bhayam, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending or fearing. He said this defending propensity is even stronger than the mating propensity. This propensity to want to protect, to want to hoard, to want to accumulate, and all of that expresses an absolute lack of trust in God. I'm not going to depend on God. I got to take care of myself, because I don't know if God's got my back or not. So actual spirituality means to have that sense. It's beautifully expressed in the Bible also. Right, Rasika, is that the Sermon on the Mount? Behold the lilies of the field, they neither toil nor spin, but they're clothed more beautifully than Solomon. And look at the birds, they don't worry about what they're going to eat. So Jesus said, God knows you need these things, and you're much more important to him than the birds or the flowers. So why are you all worried about how are you going to eat or sleep? So this is actual charity. To depend on Krishna is actual charity. Therefore, our kirtan party, unbeknownst to my friends in the church, this is actual charity. Because when one is Krishna conscious, one is automatically generous to others, knowing that Krishna is unlimited. So, very nice, thank you.
If I may, there was another one. It really nicely connects to what you were just saying towards the end. Definition of poor, those who are unsatisfied are poor. I think it comes in the very last. Those who are unsatisfied actually in life is actually poor.
Yeah, yes, that's another powerful statement. One who's unsatisfied in life is actually poor.
Because you might have a lot, you might have everything, but if you're unsatisfied, which is actually an art, to be satisfied is an art.
Yeah, yes.
And then, although you have everything, or you have a lot, you're considered poor. What is the use?
And conversely, if you have nothing, if you're spiritually fulfilled, then you're content.
Krishna, Krishna.
So nice, thank you.
So there's so many things in this whole section that caught my attention, but the one that really I'm mulling over as we sit here is the one at the end, the very end. And I think of the several places in the Bhagavatam where it says that we should give up our attachment to both pious and impious deeds. And that the life of Krishna consciousness is one in which we're trying to rid ourselves of the dualities of material, the consciousness of dualities of material existence. And there's several places where the self-realized are described that they lose the sense of inside and outside. And they can't really, there's no difference to a completely perfected person between inside and outside. It all becomes the same because there's a oneness. And I think of how learning to be satisfied in all conditions is learning how to dovetail everything that's happening with you in Krishna consciousness and realizing that everything that's unfolding is an expression of the Lord's mercy, and he's taken control of the devotee's circumstances personally.
Yes.
And therefore, the more we're conscious of that fact, that he's working in all of our circumstances, then we can have equilibrium of mind and eventually become completely detached from good and bad, heat and cold.
Knowing that everything is coming from Krishna, whatever
Yes,
comes
yeah.
our way. Yes, this is called Krishna karma. You know, the conditioned soul is just subjected to karma, which has been arranged by Krishna.
Yeah.
And then there's that sense of independence that the conditioned soul wants so badly. But once we surrender to Krishna, then everything that happens is not a result of past pious or impious deeds. It is directly controlled by Krishna.
Our curriculum.
Yes, right, and very surgically presented,
Yes.
customized.
Yes.
For our particular attachments.
The more we can accept that, the more our hearts become satisfied in
Yes.
all conditions.
That's right, and you mentioned that oneness, the absence of distinction between the inner life and the outer life, that one spiritual life just encompasses one's entire existence. This is described also in chapter 18 of the Gita about the perception of one in the mode of goodness. Sees one unified spiritual identity everywhere. This is like Brahman realization, but it's not the culmination. It's a byproduct of devotion to Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you. Gopi Jivana Prabhu, what caught your eye?
I like, it's around 39 or so, and then Krishna is explaining that real heroism is when you give up your natural tendency to enjoy your material life. So, of course, we usually, going by movies and books and so on, we think of heroism as the guy who saves the girl or who jumps in front of his friend to take the bullet. And of course, those moments are brave, but real bravery and heroism is to go a little bit against the flow of society, because it says they're the natural tendency to enjoy. It's like, okay, everyone's doing this, but the real hero is the one that says, okay, everyone's doing this, but I'm not going to follow this path. And then there's a little bit of bravery involved, because we have to have shraddha, we have to have faith, and as you were mentioning just now, you have to trust Krishna a little bit. So we're not spiritually realized yet, but you know, the Shastra and the Gurus are telling us everything you want can be found here. So it's quite heroic to just decide, okay, I'm not going to try and enjoy material life anymore, but I'm going to take up the path of trying to serve Krishna.
Powerful statement, isn't it? Yes, that's a very powerful statement, because it takes courage to go on the spiritual path. Thoreau said most people live a life of quiet desperation. Most people live a life of quiet desperation, meaning that without spirituality, people are externally trying to project happiness, but internally conflicted and dissatisfied. So there's a desperate situation. Okay, I don't want anyone to know, but I'm actually not feeling it. So the heroism of devotional service is just that. I'm going to confront my mind and senses and not acquiesce. The greatest triumph is to conquer our own mind and senses. And the cowardly approach is to just, okay, let them do whatever they want. I don't have the strength to stop them. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Right? Where in reality, the flesh is willing, but the spirit is weak. So heroism means to rise up from the degradation of allowing our mind and senses to rule our lives like an animal. But the challenge of that is it's not something you do once and it's done, like a catechism or something. Okay, now I believe. Okay, now I'm saved. It's like every day, every moment one has to confront. Is this impetus to do something? Is this coming from my own mind and senses, or is it actually something intended to please the Supreme Lord? And it's a burden. But you remember the Matrix? He had that choice: take this pill or that pill. And so you take the pill of Krishna. You take the Krishna conscious pill. I forget what color it was. You take the Krishna conscious pill, then you see the reality. And it's not necessarily it's not this easy path. It's a very challenging path. But that is the reality. Much better to live a challenging reality than a comfortable illusion. Right? That's very nice, thank you. These are fantastic points you're highlighting. How about from the Prabhupada corner over here? Kimmy, what is here? Do you have a microphone we can give to this poor deprived section of the temple room? What?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Well, it happened so that Advaita Prabhu had picked up at the end. What struck me is just a question: who is rich, who is poor? Who asked that? In this capitalistic world, you bring up somebody from Wall Street and ask them, hey, who is poor, who is rich? What kind of question is that? So, and satisfaction, when you speak about satisfaction, it's happy is not the one who has a lot, but who has enough. So it's rich people, they're such greediness, never happy, never satisfied. So happiness not really there. And also I have a quick point on Gopi Jivana's comment on heroism. And I thought of bravery is We shave up, we put bed sheets, and we go outside and dance. It takes bravery. It reminds me of P.R. Mahaprabhu. He said once when he was wearing dhotis and they were going up the stairs in some big library, somebody commented from the street, just yelled at them, "Hey, why are you wearing bed sheets?" He bravely turned around and said, "Well, because blankets are too hot."
That's PR. What you said just reminded me that there was recently a survey about how much money you need to earn in a year to feel financially comfortable. This was some question that was presented to Americans. You know what they said? $225,000 a year. You have to earn $225,000 a year to feel financially secure. Can you imagine? Yeah. Then I'll be happy if I just have this $225,000 a year, right? Too much? Saying my entire career as a grihasta, I probably haven't earned $225,000. But anyway, okay. Gopal, do you want to?
I like what Adi Sham said about greed, never being satisfied. I heard a devotee say years ago that even lust is satisfied temporarily, but greed is never satisfied. And also about good and bad, or whatever that general discussion, the verse in the Bhagavad Gita that says equipoised in happiness and distress. It's easy to be equipoised in happiness. How are you equipoised in distress? But like you said, as long as we maintain our devotional service, right, something to that effect.
That's it, yeah.
Maharaj told me one time, do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. So I relate that to that verse also.
Do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it.
If you're doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, then you're equipoised in happiness and distress.
Exactly. That's our salvation. Thank you.
On a similar point, I think in one of the paragraphs, it also talked about happiness and distress, and that real happiness is transcending happiness, which is interesting. But me and Shamala were talking, and she said that material happiness is just relief from distress. And that's what most people know to be happiness, just relief for that weekend, and then go back to suffering. So it's quite revolutionary to understand what real happiness is.
Do you remember Prabhupada's dunking stool example? When in the medieval times they would punish people by dunking them under a body of water, hold them until they just about drown, and then lift them up. So he said material life is like that. You're under the water, just about to drown, and you go up, I'm enjoying, and back down. So what passes as enjoyment is in fact just temporary relief from the suffering. Thank you. Okay, me?
Thank you for a nice class, Prabhu. I was just contemplating on this verse number 33 to 35, and the translation of it gives a list of you do this, and then it says these 24 elements bestow all desired benediction upon those persons who devotedly cultivate them. And I was just really meditating that it's like a list which you do and you become a great devotee. And the next verse from 36 to 39, it says, truthfulness means to speak the truth in pleasing way, as declared by great sages. Cleanliness is detachment in fructative activities, where renunciation is in sannyas order of life. So I didn't understand these two lines. If you can please elaborate on that.
Okay, so truthfulness means to speak the truth in a pleasing way, as declared by great sages. So that's described in chapter 18 of the Gita. Again, austerity of the speech is to speak truthfully, beneficially, and to avoid speech that offends. So, as your mother used to say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Right? Mama uvacha. So,
Mostly the second line from the cleanliness, and what is it talking about sannyas order in that one?
All right, cleanliness is detachment from fruitive activities, and whereas renunciation is the sannyas order of life. So cleanliness is detachment from fruitive activities, means that we have purified our consciousness from the idea that through material enjoyment we're going to be happy. That's detachment. But then sannyas is renunciation. Renunciation is, again, an external thing that, okay, I'm going to now live a very renounced life. I'm going to manifest my detachment externally. And sannyas life is rigorous, real, proper sannyas life. You're not supposed to have a fixed residence. You're not supposed to have resources. You're depending on Krishna totally. It doesn't always manifest exactly that way. But in the 6th chapter of the Gita, Krishna explains sannyas as that one who works as they are obliged, as Gopal was just quoting the sannyasi Maharaj, the Tadruja Maharaj. One who works as one is obligated is in the renounced order, not one who lights no fire and performs no work. So once in India, Srila Prabhupada had his young Western disciples on a stage before a large group of people. And he said, these boys and girls are better than sannyasis because they are dedicated to serving Krishna. So actual sannyas, again, sannyas is a material category of life. It's a material ashram. So renunciation as sannyas is an external, but actual detachment comes from wanting to please Krishna instead of our mind and senses. Is that all right?
Yes. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
I think that's the verse in Bhagavad Gita, one who sees action in inaction, inaction in action. So you can be externally doing nothing, renounced, but internally attached.
Yes. That applies in a number of ways. One who sees action in inaction, and action in inaction is wise among them, Krishna says. Yes. So that means the devotee is very active within, although externally may not be doing much. Like my father used to say when I was a brahmachari, what do? Just sit there and look at your navel all day? But on the other hand, the non-devotees may seem very, very busy, but what are they accomplishing? It's like a dog is chasing its tail. Very busy, very active. But what's actually getting done? All right, last word goes to Shruti Sagara Prabhu. Everyone else in the room has spoken. So Shruti Uvacha.
The one that has struck out to me was also the one Gopi Jivana Prabhu pointed out about heroism. That I can't find it now. Heroism, how it's that is how to get rid of material desires. Or I want to see the actual phrase. Real heroism is to conquer one's natural tendency to enjoy material life, and reality is seeing the Supreme Personality Godhead everywhere. So that's what struck out to me as well, actually.
How does devotional service strike you as heroism?
It's so, in a sense, it's, people think, as you were saying, how people think devotional service is looking at your navel. But actually, devotional service is the hardest because one has to face our false ego. And so that is real heroism. Everybody is running away from their problems, the real problems. Everybody is running away from their anarthas, from their misgivings. Everyone is doing all kinds of activities just so that they don't have to face their misgivings. But real heroism is to stand and face the fact that we turned away from Krishna. Not that we fell from Brahmajyoti, but we actually turned away from Krishna. That is real heroism. And to face that, accept that, repent for it, and so forth. But yeah, that takes a lot of courage, actually. People think they make a lot of money, they have so much success, and they're great heroes in this world. People are full of it. Everybody thinks that people have IT jobs, they think they're doing so much. And nothing against IT people, but but actually, real heroism is to be able to practice Krishna consciousness.
Thank you. All right. Thanks very much, I hope. So what did you think? Was this helpful? Did you get your head slightly wrapped around this vast assault of information here? A little bit, yes. Any last comments? Yes, Rasika Prabhu.
Prabhupada summed it up as always remember Krishna, never forget him.
Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. That is the foremost regulator principle, right? Yeah, of all the details of devotional, so just always remember Krishna, never forget. So may you all, what is that? Krishna Matir Astu? May you always remember Krishna. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.